So today I'm going to be talking about evaluating library assessment capabilities, a measure of effectiveness. So in this presentation, I'll provide an overview of the project undertaken by the Matariki Network of Universities to implement an international activity-based benchmarking project, and how the libraries have been developing a shared response to the project's question: if we enable and support the academic endeavour, how do we measure our effectiveness? I will also describe the process for developing a library assessment capability maturity model, which has emerged as a subsidiary project from the benchmarking activity. Now, as I do this, I'd like you to consider how this work contributes to articulating the value and impact of academic libraries. Now, the Matariki Network is an international collaborative venture that was established in 2010 to enable the member universities to enhance diversity, to share ideas, experiences and expertise. Now, each member of the network is a leading university demonstrating international best practice in research and education based on academic traditions. Now, as you can see from the slide, the network includes Dartmouth College in New Hampshire, Durham University in the northeast of England, Queen's University in Ontario, Canada, and my hometown, Dunedin, with the University of Otago, Tübingen University in Germany, the University of Western Australia in Perth, and Uppsala University in Sweden. Now, the members share common features and traits. We all have a majority of our students in residential colleges, we all have medical schools, and we all teach and research across all of the disciplines. The network itself takes its name, Matariki, from the Maori name for the group of stars called the Pleiades, which are also known as the Seven Sisters. Of course, there's 7 universities. Matariki is also the Maori word for New Year, symbolising new beginning. So it's well understood that universities need to be working towards methodologies and strategies to show that they are making an impact on teaching, learning and research across their universities. We are all under increasing pressure to show how we perform relative to like institutions in a global community. However, there is growing interest in cross-national benchmarks. There are little transnational benchmarks that allow for reliable international comparisons. And the Matariki Network provides the platform for the libraries to share in the development of a series of common international performance measures, which will provide each of the universities with a benchmark for reviewing and comparing library performance in specific areas of interest. Now, benchmarking is a process of identifying best practices and learning from others, whereas activity-based benchmarking is a methodology in which a selected number of activities, which are either typical or representative of a range of services an institution provides, are analysed and compared with similar activities in other selected institutions. Now, the comparison of performance and process amongst institutions possessing similar characteristics is going to lead to a better understanding of relative performance in an environment where there's an increasing need to demonstrate value and impact. As noted, benchmarking amongst the Matariki Network libraries will set individual institutional performance in an international context, and it will help each identify areas of strength and weakness. Identification of best practice amongst the group will augment quality assurance processes and highlight areas and pathways for potential improvement. Now, to give you some background, in 2011, the 7 libraries within the Matariki Network agreed to participate in an activity-based benchmarking project. Now, the aim of the project is to address the question: if we enable and support the academic endeavour, how do we measure our effectiveness? The project involves comparisons between the libraries of a number of services and activities that are representative of overall library service provision. But rather than measuring and comparing traditional processes, the focus is on activities that support wider university strategic imperatives. Now, going back to the work of Joe Matthews, one of our leading figures in library assessment, he's identified the need for us to have measures that are relevant to wider imperatives. Now, within the project, a survey cycle has been established, and to date, the libraries have completed 2 survey exercises and a third is now underway. With a focus on support for teaching and learning, the first survey concentrated on activities and practice for programs that support the transition of first-year students to university life. The second survey focused on the library and the student experience, in particular, projects in the provision of library space that support students' experiences. And the third survey is focusing on planning for change to support research, not in isolation, but in partnership with others. Now, through the survey cycle, we've returned to the research question, how do we measure our effectiveness? And we've asked ourselves, how do we assess our assessment? How could we frame assessment to identify an improvement path? And what could a mature approach to library assessment look like? Now, this has led the libraries to consider the development of a library assessment capability maturity model within the context of the benchmarking project. Through responding to survey questions and comparing activities between the libraries, details of assessment capability and a pathway for improving assessment are being identified. Now, this process is contributing to developing a shared response to determine how we measure our effectiveness. Now, the development of the benchmarking project has been shared by all the Matariki Network libraries, and progress has been built on what works. And you can see here from this slide, this is the project's website. As the project has developed, the process has been flexible to address issues as they've arisen. There's been the ability to make changes to the project timetable in deploying and completing surveys, and this has enabled each library to contribute resources to the project, in particular to address competing priorities and variant academic calendars. Time has been taken to identify terms and definitions so as to develop a shared language, and this has facilitated communication and ongoing progress. Survey questions have been amended to add clarity and changes made to extend what can be learned from each library. Now, the online collaborative workspace that you can see here was set up to permit the libraries to contribute to the project as resources allow. And the workspace has provided a place to share documents and resources and has provided some continuity and a record of progress as personnel changes have occurred in some of the libraries. Now, here are some of the network partners. As the project has progressed, other activities across the network have been developed. In particular, the Matariki Humanities Colloquia. And these have extended the benchmarking project. The colloquia were created to allow humanities faculty to share resources, expertise and experiences. And library senior managers contribute to the colloquia with specific topics that address library support for the humanities in the digital age. Now, the colloquia are scheduled annually, and to date, of course, there's been 3, with a 4th arranged for September this year in Durham. The colloquia have also allowed for face-to-face meetings of library representatives to consider the activity benchmarking project. These meetings have extended the shared development of the project and allowed for exchanging more information on what it is we do to improve our assessment processes. During the first colloquia in Dartmouth, the concept of a capability maturity model in the context of how we measure our effectiveness was shared and discussed. This discussion resulted in the survey questions being adapted to build an understanding about assessment processes that are used across each library. And this adaptation included seeking more detail about individual formative and summative assessment activities. For illustration, some of the revised survey questions are included on this slide. Now, these sought details on the processes used to gather data that inform the development of the project being reported on. Further questions sought details on the performance measures used to evaluate the success of the project, and information on plans for ongoing evaluation of the effectiveness of the project's outcomes. The decision to share in the development of a library assessment capability maturity model was reinforced by the successful application of the capability maturity framework by both Wilson and Town. And I understand today you would have already heard from Frankie about the quality and maturity model. So through addressing questions relating to the culture of quality, she developed a comprehensive quality maturity model and a quality culture assessment instrument for libraries. And just to recap, as this slide illustrates, there are 5 levels of capability maturity. Each level represents a measure of effectiveness of any specific process or program, from ad hoc processes to mature and continuously improving processes. And this provides criteria and characteristics that need to be fulfilled in order to reach a particular maturity level. Now, this isn't a new concept, and it borrows heavily from capability maturity models that have been under development for some time. So just to go through the slide here, we've got the initial ad hoc, where low-level work is often repeated as there is limited effort to make to document procedures so that a process can become repeatable. Then we move through to the second level, where things are repeatable and documented, where the process is at least documented sufficiently such that it can begin to become standard procedures. We move through to defined or confirmed, where the process is both defined and confirmed as standard business processes. Outcomes, timelines, effort, etc. can be measured and quantifiable. Then we move through to managed and measured, where the process is managed in accordance with agreed upon metrics and required outcomes. And through to continuous improvement, where processes are managed deliberately through processes to incorporate continuous improvement and organisational optimisation. Now, the meeting of the second colloquium provided an opportunity to introduce work undertaken by other staff at the University of Otago. Now, this separate project utilised the Australasian Council on Online Distance and E-Learning benchmarking tool, commonly referred to as the ACAUL benchmarking tool. And this focuses on technology-enhanced learning. Since being introduced in 2004, the ACAUL benchmarking tool has been rigorously applied and revised. It includes 8 benchmarks, with each containing a series of criteria-based performance indicators using a 1 to 5 scale of capability. The tool comprises a 2-phased approach where it's applied in a self-assessment process, and then it's used to develop a team response within or between institutions. Sharing the details of the Otago ACAUL project validated the direction that the benchmarking project was taking. It also allowed the Matariki libraries to conceptualise what a library assessment capability maturity model may look like and how it might be utilised for continuous improvement. Within the field of designing maturity models, the process for developing a model draws from guidelines for design science, and these are outlined by Hefner, March and Mark and RAM in 2004. Now, work in this area had recently been reviewed, the limitations identified, and best practice approaches suggested. Now, having assessed the design process of maturity models, Becker and others provide a procedures model for developing maturity model, which further refines Hefner's guidelines. This procedures model, illustrated on the slide, provides a useful framework for considering the construction of an assessment maturity model. It provides a clear flow of activities and decision-making junctures, emphasising both an iterative and reflective approach. And so far in the development of the assessment maturity model, the need for the model has been identified. Details of what the model might look like have been articulated, and a process for collecting examples of practice has been built on the first stages of the activity benchmarking project. Now, the next phase in the project involves comparisons with existing maturity models and consideration of what required criteria and characteristics for each particular maturity level might look like. Now, the comparison with existing maturity models took place at the third Matariki Humanities Colloquium in October 2015. So the obvious model selected for review for comparison was Wilson's quality maturity model. Now, during discussions, it was acknowledged that the quality maturity model was developed with the lens of the wider issue of quality. In the quality maturity model, 40 elements are grouped into 7 facets of a culture of quality were identified. Now, it was agreed that assessment is, of course, a significant part of quality, although obviously not the only consideration. And our review of the quality maturity model identified that the facets of the model do not provide direct alignment to an assessment maturity model. However, there are elements of the quality maturity model that may have relevance to an assessment maturity model. Now, these elements include processes such as progress monitoring or performance measurement. And you can see here illustrated on the slide how that could be articulated across the different levels of capability maturity. Other areas include gathering feedback, collation of feedback, responding to feedback, and acting on feedback. And the suitability of these elements, along with descriptions of what each level of capability looks like, will be discussed at further network library meetings. Now, to provide further guidance in determining the characteristics of the assessment maturity model, the CAUL's work on assessing assessment was also considered at the meeting at Queen's. Now, in providing a toolkit to evaluate the quality and rigour of library assessment plans, her work draws on the elements of the assessment cycle. Her application identifies 4 phases of assessment: establishing assessment objectives, selecting and designing methodologies and collecting data, analysing and interpreting data, and using results. Now, it was agreed that focusing only on these elements should reduce the complexity of the design and simplify the development of an assessment maturity model without compromising its value and relevance to the academic library community. Now, a template for the assessment maturity model has been determined, and there you get to see it. As part of the 3rd survey cycle, the partners have been asked to populate this model with examples from practice. And further meetings at the Matariki Communities Club will provide an opportunity for the partners to review and discuss these examples. As the benchmarking project continues, and as the partners examine how they measure their effectiveness, more examples of practice will be added to the model. Defined levels of capability can be tested and validated, and examples from each partner will contribute to the model. The assessment maturity model will be developed as a living model, and it will allow each library to identify an improvement path. An assessment cycle could be established, such as setting assessment objectives. Based on those objectives, determining assessment methods and data collection, analysis of results and interpretation and presentations of findings, sharing those results, using the results, improving services, and improving the assessment process. Now, considering one element of the assessment cycle could lead to defining levels of capability along the lines outlined in this slide. And this is just provided as an example. This data has not come from the group, but it's just to give you an idea of what it might look like. So if we're considering methods of data collection, gathering feedback, ad hoc, we've got their feedback as client initiated and not collated. If it was repeatable, feedback is proactively sought, but subsets of clients for specific purposes. If it was defined, it could be that a range of repeatable methods are used to gather feedback, whereas if it was managed, data from defined feedback methods is structured for use and reuse. And in an ideal world, if things were being continuously improved, assessment of methods and data reuse is used to improve feedback gathering exercises. So to recap, the Matariki Network of University Libraries, as an international group, provides the opportunity to construct an assessment maturity model on an international scale. The established survey cycles of the activity benchmarking project are allowing for the development of the assessment maturity model and allow for the model to be populated with examples of activity. Now, in line with Becker and others, the procedures model, as the benchmarking activity progresses, provides an iterative maturity model development process. Defined levels of capability can be tested and validated, and examples from each partner will contribute to the model. Over time, the examples in this model will provide the opportunity for library communities to evaluate their assessment capabilities and identify paths to improvement, and be in a better position to articulate their value and impact. If you want any more background around what I've been talking about today, I urge you to download these papers. So I'm ready for any questions now.
Thank you, Simon. That was fascinating. I think both the international aspect and a lovely follow-on from Frankie Wilson's talk this morning. We have time for questions. Anyone have questions for Simon? Simon, will be some video back on.
Sure.
Simon, I have a question which is a kind of practical one really, in terms of what you've done at Otago that's come from this international interaction. So how has it impacted on your own approach to assessment?
Sure, well, across the institution there's an awful lot more awareness of the importance of assessment and what it is we do. Through sharing assessment practices, we've learned from one of our partner institutions that they were having trouble capturing the benefits of their projects, and they were using a project on a page kind of document that was put forward at the initial stages of the project. We adapted that project on a page idea into our project framework, and so when someone comes up with a bright idea or a new initiative that they want to instigate, we identify the benefits at the very beginning of that process, and those benefits are then measured through the entire process of the project. And that's been really valuable for us here at Otago, because often, you start with a good idea, and then as you're moving along, you think, oh, we've got to evaluate it now. So we've built evaluation into the very beginning of our project process, and we've been applying that for a year now, and it's just increased the whole awareness across the team of the importance of assessment, particularly now the University Support Services is under review. We're increasingly having to demonstrate our value and impact, and now we're collecting that data at the beginning of the project process.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, you can join with me in thanking Simon.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk with you.